Hey there, welcome back to my channel. Today's video, I want to talk about the MLB trade deadline and specifically the Chicago Cubs because they've been getting a lot of headlines lately, and I think that I can kind of sympathize with them and help some of those Cub fans who are struggling to process what their team just did, tearing down their World Series champion. And that's why I have some players on the top that the Cubs just got back in trades with some of the players on my favorite team, the Kansas City Royals. And I want to try to connect the dots here on how this top row is maybe a better option than what my Kansas City Royals did after their World Series team kind of fell apart. So feel free to leave a comment down below. What was your opinion of the MLB trade deadline? Who do you think won? Who do you think made out well? Who do you think maybe did not do the best? And specifically to the Chicago Cubs, do you think they did the right moves? Would you have liked them to hang on to at least one of the guys? Maybe you don't like the players they got in return. Feel free to leave that down in the comment section below. I'm excited to kind of interact with you all down there. And if you're new to this channel and you have just recently subscribed, feel free to put that in the comments below. I'll subscribe to your channel back as kind of my way of showing my support for you all who have supported my channel as well. So with all that behind us, let's go ahead and get into it. These players on the top row are just some of the players the Cubs got back in their trades. For Craig Kimbrell, I believe they got Nick Madrigal. Now, Kimbrell can actually play next year as well for the White Sox because he has a team option that it's pretty cheap for a player of his caliber for this year, $15 or $16 million. Madrigal, you can see here, 4th overall pick. I think he was on that national championship team in Oregon State with Adley Rutschman. Could be wrong about that. I don't know if they actually played together or not. He's going to be an amazing contact hitter. Could win batting titles for the Chicago Cubs. He's going to hit over 300. Little to no power, but he's going to put the ball in play. He's not going to swing and miss. He's not going to strike out. Madrigal's going to play second base for him almost immediately. Pete Crow Armstrong was the one they got back for Javy Baez. A couple months of Javy Baez for this kid. It's 5 or 6 years of control over Pete Crow Armstrong, the 19th overall pick in the 2020 draft. I believe it was him and Zach Veen were the two big position players, high school position players in last year's draft. Obviously, like Spencer Torkelson was a college player, but if you're looking at the younger guys, those high school players, it was Pete Crow Armstrong, it was Zach Veen, and maybe another person I'm forgetting about right now. But to get a player of his caliber for a couple months of Javy Baez, I thought they did really well in that deal. Kevin Alcantara, or Alcantara, not exactly sure how to pronounce it. I don't know as much about him or the other player that the Yankees sent to the Cubs for Anthony Rizzo. But you can see this guy was very, very young. He was the only 16-year-old playing in minor league baseball, at least in the United States, in 2019. And he's 6'6" and 188, so he's got plenty of room to grow. And I think that he has definitely a chance to develop. And then Bryce Ball was the first guy that the Cubs just got back in a trade for Jock Peterson, which seems like it happened years and years ago, which wasn't really that long ago because Jock Peterson was kind of the first domino of that Cubs teardown. And obviously there were other guys that they received back. I just didn't have cards of the guys, you know, for all of them, the players they received in return. So, okay, long story short, why do I think the Cubs did the right thing, right? If I go back to my Kansas City Royals of 2015, 2014, went to the World Series 2 times in a row, I feel like there's a lot of parallels there, right? The Royals had been a bad, bad team throughout the 2000s, and they were just bottom of the barrel, laughingstock bad. And they finally got a group of players to give some respect back to the franchise, become winners, and then we watch these kids come up to the major league level and absolutely do things that we hadn't seen in decades, right? And with the Cubs, what was it, 107 years for the Cubs missing out on the World Series? So it was even to a greater extent in Chicago than it was in Kansas City. But in Kansas City, we saw Moustakas, we saw Kane, we saw Hosmer, we saw Salvador Perez, we saw Wade Davis. These young guys come up and achieve success that our team had not seen in such a long time, in so many people's lifetimes, right? And so, like, for example, this card is not worth more than $1 or $2 at the most. But if you take this card into Kansas City, not even to baseball fans, right? You could just take it walking around in Kansas City and ask people to tell you what this card is. I bet they could connect it to specific emotions, moments, where they were when they were watching the 2014 playoffs, the 2015 playoffs, and the World Series. This is an iconic image of Moustakas diving over kind of the camera bay there to rob a foul ball in the ALCS in 2014. There was such a connection to the city. They got reinvigorated with the team, and the Royals and the fans made such a connection in those years of 2014 and 2015. And I can only imagine in a city as big and as passionate as Chicago that it was even to a greater degree than what happened in Kansas City with the Royals. And so it hurts whenever players like this eventually have to leave or they choose to leave. And so what the Royals did, they hung on to basically everybody all the way to the end of their contracts. They did trade Wade Davis. They traded him for Jorge Soler, of all people, to the Chicago Cubs. And that was the only one they traded. They hung on to everybody else. Obviously, Salvador Perez is still with the team because his contract, he signed a really good team-friendly contract. But Moustakas, Kane, Hosmer, Alcides Escobar, they played all the way through the 2016 season, which we didn't make the playoffs, the Royals then. And then their final year, 2017, of their contracts, Kane, Hosmer, Moustakas, Escobar were all free agents, just like the Cubs have had with Bryant, Rizzo, Javy Baez. And the Royals held on to them all the way to the end of the season. And it was so bizarre. That last home game of the season, the Royals almost did like a senior night thing. You know, if you've had a senior night in your high school, your college, where your coach pulls out, you know, the seniors in the last inning or the last couple minutes of their final home game to get one last roar of applause from their friends, family, and the crowd. Show of appreciation for everything they did at the school. It was like that in a Major League Baseball professional game, and that's something you hardly ever see. The Royals and Ned Yost pulled Kane, Hosmer, Moustakas, Escobar out of that very last home game in 2017 because we had held on to these players all the way to the end, the very last part of the season, weren't going to make the playoffs, and we thought this is probably the last time you'll see those four, that core players, on the field together for the Kansas City Royals. And so the Royals ultimately didn't get any trades with those guys. Now, they might have got some free agent compensation for Hosmer when he went to San Diego, and maybe Lorenzo Cain when he went to Milwaukee. But the Royals held on to everybody, and I don't know if it was the right move or not. Actually, they were able to re-sign Moustakas and Escobar. They're actually able to re-sign two of those guys in the offseason. So maybe the Cubs will be able to re-sign Bryant, Rizzo, Javy Baez, one of those guys this offseason as well. I know they've made comments where they would love to come back, but ultimately it'll be interesting to see what happens. So feel free to leave your comments down below. Chicago fans, I feel for you. Trust me, I know it hurts right now. It stings watching Bryant and Rizzo and Baez hit home runs for other teams, and wearing that other uniform just doesn't look right on them. But ultimately, I think the Cubs did the right thing. They got some players back, some young players with talent who will be in the organization for 4, 5, 6 more years at least. And they set themselves up where they at least acquired some assets where the Royals kind of hung on to their guys all the way to the end and weren't as able to acquire as many assets. And so we'll see. So thank you so much for watching this one. Leave your comments down below what you felt about the trade deadline and the Chicago Cubs, and I will catch you in the next video. See you.